Today's guest is Jen Romanowski, who is a psychic medium, a soul healer, spiritual advisor, shadow worker, eclectic witch, practice magician, and a recovering alcoholic and founder of Sunshine Readings. Her passion is helping others learn how to step into their shadow so they can uncover their magical gifts, especially the ones that are needed to remove any energetic blocks to their soul's alignment. So, Jen, thank you very much for being here. How are you doing today?
I am good. Thank you for having me. I
You're
appreciate it.
very welcome. I'm tend to attract like a self-development spiritual woo crowd. So this is like right up the alley as far as like the more typical
Yeah, I
guests.
love seeing some of the words you used in your materials and stuff. I was like, yeah, he's gonna get this. He's gonna
Correct.
get
Yeah.
this.
So I guess as a preamble, like, yeah, feel free to get as woo as possible. I have no issues with any of that either. Certainly, we've had other guests dive into that. But what I'd love for you to start us off with is, it's like a long list of things that you do, right? And I know, especially with like spiritual individuals that dive into this kind of healing work, generally we didn't get there by accident. Like some stuff had to happen that really got us to our gift. So I'd love for you to just tell us your story of what went down and how you got to doing what you're doing.
Yeah. I get asked this question often, and it's really kind of two parts. It's how long have you been doing this, or how did you get into it? And often people are asking about from the business side. So I've been doing this professionally, and I describe professionally as taking money for doing this work for 2.5 years. But I've actually been on this spiritual path since I was 16, which is well over, I think, 24 years at this point. Um, where the professional side came about, you mentioned in one of that descriptions of me, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And so I hit my rock bottom on my 40th birthday, which was just over 3 years ago now. And it was pretty horrible and filled with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And I was horrified at the human I was in that instance. I really was, and knew I did not want to be that. And so I had that rock bottom was actually the second relapse of the year because I had attempted to stay sober by myself. And so that was on vacation. So as I came back from vacation, the agreement with my partner at that time was that I had to stop trying to do it alone and had to go to AA. And so I stepped into AA, 12-step program, and was really kind of shocked and surprised at how spiritual of a program it was. Um, a lot of times people think it's very Christian based. And yes, if the area that you're in has a high, predominance of Christianity, that is going to be the spiritual belief of a lot of folks. But the area that I am in, which is, in Dearborn, Michigan, it's not all Christians. And so all of the meetings that I would step into were so incredibly respectful of other spiritual paths that I felt a lot of comfort being able to embrace what I had been identified as my own spiritual path, which was, I beat my own drum, I explore my own spirituality, and I define it myself, and what I believe in is up to me to define. That's even still to this day a lot of what I teach my clients is it's up to them to define what their spiritual path is. And so here I was 90 days into finally starting to see some clarity in my mental space, and I knew I needed something to keep me on that spiritual path. Um, because Christians, or even like we have a high Islamic population around here and Jewish, they have churches and they have a weekly type of thing that they often are going to with their community. And though I had my AA meetings, I didn't have anything else outside of it. And so I kind of created my own weekly ritual and decided to jump online, because at that time too, I had realized that in my alcoholism, I had isolated myself a lot. And so I jumped online and started offering tarot readings, just just to give back to people and to stay in touch with my own spirituality. And yeah, in January of 2020, just about 4 months into my sobriety, Sunshine Readings was born through me needing something to keep me sober. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I mean, I say this all the time on the podcast, but it's true every single time, right? Like so many instances where somebody related to this healing work, oftentimes where they end up when, like you say, you take it professionally, we start to get paid for it. There's that recurring theme of like my mess becomes my message, right? Like that was the thing that got me to here, and now that is the thing that I'm passing on and sharing. So thank you very much, A, for doing that, and B, I think the addiction aspect on whatever spectrum of addiction you fall into, whether it be something that you have to go to an AA meeting for, or scrolling on my phone, every single entrepreneur deals with their aspect of addiction. Sometimes they don't even know what they're doing is addiction. So I think that's also a very important thing to talk about. So in that vein, I'd love for you to then just break down what are the challenges that you're experiencing in your business right now that you wanted to bring here today.
Yeah. Well, first off, I've got to say the fact that you're recognizing addiction and you're like commenting, yes, yes, thank you for saying that, because so many of us don't realize, right, that what is like distracting us from really living or doing what we want to be doing, and it's often because we're distracted by something we're addicted to. I say I'm a recovering alcoholic, workaholic, perfectionism, and control freak. Those are actually the four things that I'm in recovery for, in case you were wondering. Um, Today, what brings me here is, so for the last 2.5, we're almost going on 3 years, I have been actively working on growing Sunshine Readings, aligning myself for what I believe my true purpose is in this world, in this incarnation of my life. And I've done so while holding a corporate job as well. And so I'm in this very interesting place right now where I feel a very strong calling to do my purpose. Yet I actually love what I do in corporate. And so I feel I don't that's why I kind of said when we were chatting when we started, like, I don't even know where I may be stuck. Like, I don't even know what it is that's prohibiting me from being able to grow the business, or, you know, there's pieces of me that feels like I need to step out of corporate, and this big question mark keeps popping up in my head of like, do I really? Maybe it has a different view, maybe it has a different picture. I don't know right now. So I'm in this very interesting place in both my life and my business of what happens, what's prohibiting me from whatever needs to happen next, right?
Okay. So because I know you deal with these types of questions with your clients,
Mm.
how do you think you might answer your own question?
Mm. Ah. Mm. uh, People often ask, they're like, do you do this work on yourself? And I'm like, yes, but I still suffer from an ego, so it's harder to do it on yourself, right?
Amen to that as well. Yes. Yeah.
um there are pieces of me that have chattered, you call it that head trash. And there is some of this head trash that goes, oh, but corporate needs me. They just they need me. Like, they're not going to be, how would they ever survive without me? Right? So there is some of this, story there of like, no, I'm so desperately needed in that role. And on the flip side, there is this in my own business, there's this piece of wow, if I step out of corporate, I'm out of corporate, like a safety net is gone, you know? And then it is all on me. And I don't know if it's and these are really the places that I've been at. And this is exactly the work that I would explore with my own clients, is like, let's talk about it. Where does this show up? Where does this, and I don't know if this is fear right now, because it doesn't feel in my body like how I would normally recognize fear, right? Um, Or is it actual, you know, not so much fear, but like, okay, you just need the plan. So I do have, I told you I'm a workaholic and a perfectionist. So that right there is like, am I actually creating this need for perfection in order to avoid even stepping? So I'm really not positive, and I've had these conversations with myself for probably about 30 days now, Drasco,
Okay,
where
fair enough.
explored these various questions, and I myself have not been able to get the light bulb to pop.
Okay, fair enough. So I mean, you're in the right place, as I told you before.
Hmm.
So one thing I just want to ask you from what you said. So you said like corporate needs me, right? Like how would they survive without me? Like that's the narrative. So if you were to turn that around and say I need corporate, how does that land for you?
Hmm. So there is right now that it's a true statement, right? Right now, I have not switched the revenue um, percentage, right?
Right. So then just
So
I don't want to cut you off for the sake of cutting you off. It just if there's red flags or anything that I want to explore, get clarification on, I'll point that
yeah.
out. It's not that I'm trying to disqualify what you're saying. Um, because you just mentioned, okay, so I haven't switched the revenue, right? And
Mhm.
when you were talking about corporate needs me, your follow-up where your brain went to was, well, how would they survive without me? So if you flip
Mm.
that around, how would I survive without them?
Yeah, and so this is the really interesting thing is like, I know I like, there is this viewpoint in this picture where I'm like, well, I'd have all my ducks in a row and I'd be able to do this. And the time and the space to go out and get the additional clients or have the space to do the coaching, to make up would be there at that point. Right. And so like, this is where you are like spot on in some of the struggle. I can hear that narrative. I understand and see that. But then there's this piece of like, no, you wouldn't, creating that, stepping out of corporate would create that additional space that I would need to actually no longer need them, right?
Right. So then just to kind of bring that back full circle, right? So there's a level of projection in that narrative, right?
Mhm.
Everything that I'm saying, like corporate needs me, they wouldn't survive without me. It's actually about me. I need
Mhm.
them right now because the safety net is gone if I like, so I can't survive without them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, and I'm just saying that because words are important because
Mhm.
is if you're projecting it, corporate needs me, you're not actually like you're one step removed from where you need to shine the light bulb.
Yeah.
Right. So that's
Yep.
like number one. And it seems to me like that resonates with you.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Okay.
It does.
Got it. So if you then dive deeper into that, so what are you afraid of?
Of the I need corporate, like what fear bases up in that? Um, some of the fear is a bit of there are certain benefits and things that come about with like, here in the States, our corporate pays for our health care, right? They pay for our health care, they pay for short-term disability, they pay for a number of various different benefits. Um, and so there's a bit of like, oh snap, do I know and understand how to replace all of that? Right? Do I
The self trust. Like I'm
Yeah,
afraid that I don't
yeah, yeah.
trust myself to be able to replace that safety net.
Yep. And I have started doing some of the looking of pricing out and looking and doing some of the research. Um, Gosh, and now like, even this like uncomfortableness just settled over. I kind of went, like, duh, if you just wrote down, because I'm spectacular at executing a to-do list. If you just wrote down the things that you needed to have in place, would things be different? Um,
Right. So awareness isn't really an issue here, right? Like you're very, but like I didn't even have to prompt that. You were like, okay, yeah. So the next logical step is like write down what needs to happen to be make this
Yeah,
transition. So it's not about the tactics. It seems to
yeah.
me at this
No,
point.
it's not about the tactics. I don't struggle with the ability to execute or anything of that nature. Like when things are identified, there is really this place of letting go, like letting go of of the corporate job. There is this just piece of it that for some odd reason, and I've been doing some of the work that I'm actually right now personally trying to um, change about myself is speaking my truth when it comes to these difficult conversations, right? So, like, there is also like, I have to now go talk to my corporate job about this. Hey, by the way, and this is like, because I've committed to them that I'm not going to be like, here's a 2 week notice, right? It's just, I live with very high integrity. And in the role that I am, if I was in my manager's shoes and somebody said, here's just two, I would just be done. Like it would put them in a very hard place. So I don't want to do that to them. So I owe and have told them, they know about this. They know about my business. They know about, wanting to transition. Even at the beginning of this year, I went from a 40-hour work week to a 30-hour work week with agreements of them. So like they're completely aware. There is no like hiding anything. And so I keep going like, why am I not just having these conversations?
So what's so scary about trusting yourself to go all in?
Mm. I this I and I'm not gonna this is the question I have yet to be able to answer. I'm not joking. This is the question that I've yet to be able to answer. Like it's like I'm it's like I'm not answering that question because once I do, now I'll know what I need to change to like
There's
step
nowhere to
over.
hide
There's
behind.
nowhere to
Yeah.
hide. And this is the craziest thing. This is like no joke why I'm like maybe Drasco could help me get through this because I can't come up with the answer. Why am I not? Why am I not having these conversations? Why am I not just taking the leap? Right? And there's this pieces of me that kind of come into this place of like, well, there's no going back. And it's like, well, no, duh, there's no going. You just go forward. Like, come on now. This is what you've always done. Um,
Right. And again, like you like logically, this all makes sense to you. It is the internal fear and kind of like disbobulation that's causing the stuckness, right? So,
there is, and I'll share this
yep.
because this is the first like feared response where my body actually felt fear.
Mm,
Um, and the thought that came through my mind, and I have a very challenging relationship with my parents. I've gone no contact with them back in April. So I have not talked to them since then. And I just ran this story through my head of like, I'm horrified at telling my parents I'm leaving my corporate job. And that was the first time I actually felt fear again. And then I went back to this whole place of like, but wait, you're not talking to them anyways.
right. But there's probably, a little girl, Jen, in
Uh,
there that is terrified of speaking her truth and showing them that she can trust herself.
yeah, yeah, very, very much. And I didn't like there's this weird place right now that I'm in that I'm going like, oh my God, did you go no contact because you knew that you could like you just could not have that conversation. Like I like
Mm.
not even I
It's
didn't
another
just
protection mechanism.
yeah, like I don't want to have that conversation with them. Right. Like I don't want and now I don't even have to have that conversation because I'm not even talking to them about it. But is that creating this whole weird energetic within me, that I just yeah, another kind of reason to not. I don't know. I don't even know that I've and this is piece of me is like, no, you don't want to fucking face that. Excuse me. You do not want to even address that. Like, mm-mm. um, but yeah, I'm.
So just from the outside looking in, to just reflect all of that back, right?
Mm-hmm.
The through line here is creating narratives, structures, obstacles, or conditions that really reinforce and enable the current default, the current comfort zone to just continue to perpetuate,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that resonates with you.
Yeah, yeah. Like I'm watching in my head, oh God, all of these like stories that I'm creating to not leave corporate, like to not like, oh well, like I can't, like all of these things, like, and not even that I would have recognized them as such, right? Not even though like, I would recognize them, like this whole not talking to my parents, and like, oh, I can't really leave, like how am I, why would that even matter? I don't even know. It's so
So
that's
yeah,
such a.
there's probably layers, especially with the parent conversation. It's probably not just about that. That's just another projection. But if you were to take all these realizations and now zoom out a little bit, how are they a problem inside of your business?
Continuing to stay in corporate is challenging my mind space right now a lot of so I've got 30 hours that I'm spending on something every week that is not aligned to like my purpose, my passion, and where I want my life to be having an impact. um that's a problem in my business. That's 30 hours just in a time space, let alone when I shut down for those days, where my head is continuing to spin with my corporate related stuff.
Sure. So then, and I'm just gonna invite you to get even more specific there, because technically what you just described is okay, being in a corporate environment takes up a lot of mental real estate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which is more of a description of my state. How is that specifically a problem in or with your business?
I am not able right now, because I can't spend that time. I'm not able to grow my team in the fashion that I would want to, like spend the time with them to be able to actually grow to support me so that I could not have to worry about certain things.
Sorry, and this is
Um,
team within your current
yeah,
business. Is
within
that what
my
you're referring
current
to?
business.
Okay.
Yep. And I'm not able to, like, it's like, even though I have time set aside to work with my individual clients, like literally in revenue generating hours, I don't even have time right now to identify what's not working in my business.
So I don't have time. So, okay. So I don't have time to even identify what's wrong in the business. So
Yeah.
that is again a me problem, right? I think that's kind of what's unpacking here. Like
Hmm.
these are states that your current setup impacts your ability to do certain things.
Yeah.
But the business itself, like if you take that one layer deeper, how is that a problem?
It's not generating the revenue that I would want.
Okay. So it's, I don't have the capacity to generate the revenue I want.
Hmm.
Okay. In terms of both mental real estate and time.
Correct.
Okay. And how does that make you feel?
Um, really pissed off because for years in corporate, I've helped corporations make millions upon millions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like different standards for the other versus different standards for myself,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
right? So that is also not in alignment. Now, if you look at things like, okay, so I'm not aligned with my purpose, my passion, my impact. How is that? Like, what are the consequences of that to you personally?
Mm. Personally, there's a handful of things that it impacts. The personal satisfaction that you get just in living, right? Like life, just living in itself, like gives you the sense of wonderment and awe. And so the less I'm actually doing aligned, the less wonderment and awe that I feel in life.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So basically, a lack of fulfillment in what you spend the majority of your week doing.
yeah, I'm choosing those words carefully because there's fulfillment that I receive within corporate because I do lead a team and I am impacting people's lives and I am changing things for the better. There is fulfillment that I receive there. It is not in comparison to the level of like wonderment and awe that I receive when I'm truly watching people transform their individual life, right? Like to see them wake up, to see their light bulbs go off. It's not that type. So there's still fulfillment, but it is not to the level that
Right.
that
So
I
it's
receive.
more a difference maybe of there's fulfillment on both ends. Not like I hate my job and I gotta quit, but I'm not like willing to quit. It is I'm fulfilled on both areas in different ways. What's missing is the impact,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that
Yeah.
ripple impact of I do X. Here is the impact in person Y.
Yeah. Yeah, because a lot of in my own personal business, I look at the impact that I have in these individuals' lives, then trickles itself down to impact their lives.
Mm.
And it's like I don't have children, and I've answered this question before with people like, why don't you have children? And I'm like, well, I've never wanted them, but I look at my role in life as being able to help the mothers and the parents and the fathers, right, feel better in their lives because then they get to benefit their children's lives. So I actually impact more children in that fashion than
It's
I
your way
would
to
if I was.
nurture, right? Like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
your
very
nurturing
very
self.
much so. Very much so. And like I still have these components in my corporate, and that to me is a big piece of like that is my biggest struggle of pulling myself out of that is that there is still pieces like I am allowed to still nurture and to help lead and to grow the team that I have in my corporate. It's not possible to do at the scale that I can do
Right.
in
So I think for
my
you, the distinction here in the typical quote unquote story of this is you're not going from like bad to something that's aligned. You're actually moving from good to great, right? Which I think is an added layer of comfort. That's
mm,
like there's no urgency to actually move because it's good. Like,
mm-hmm,
why like if I gotta give up good to go through a tumultuous period of uncertainty, facing all the things we're talking about right now, which when you get into like all those fears related to parents, which in terms of letting go, in terms of self-trust, right? Especially for somebody who's gone through addiction, there's going to be a big wounding. Like, how do I trust myself when I've had so much evidence in my life where I wasn't able to trust my own word and to do the thing, right? It's like, how do I give up good to really face all of that? So what lands for you there?
I that self trust is really what you know. I don't know that I necessarily viewed it as like a lack of self trust. You've said it, and it's kind of like poked me a couple of times when you've used those words, and I'm like, oh, no, I trust myself. Um, and it's interesting because when I see this, it's like the way that that story plays itself out doesn't play itself out of like lack of self trust or not trusting. The story that's playing myself out at the end is this like ridicule of failure, right? And it's really weird to me to even say that, because like I believe in failure. Failure is a part of how we get anywhere we need to be in life, right? Like you have to be willing to fail. You have to be, willing to accept failure. And like I do, but there's this like weird story that's playing itself out of being angry at people for judging me for failing at the end. Like, how dare you? You never took that risk. Like, why? And so now here goes this story that I've got to share of my dad. My dad has told me this story, and I never realized, I guess, this um, playing in my head right now. My dad has told me the story that once upon a time he had a friend that was an entrepreneur that would always try to pull him into their schemes, right? In every way, shape, or form. And my dad would no, 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 no. One of them, my dad was the guy asked my dad to join him at a up and coming franchise meeting. So this was a new franchise that was just looking to come into the Metro Detroit market, and they were looking for 5 people to buy in. And I don't remember the exact price, but it was ridiculously low for a franchise at that time in the early '80s. And it was like something along the lines of the buy-in was probably like 50 grand or something of that nature. And my dad decided no, he wasn't going to do it. It was too much. 50 grand was just too much. Well, lo and behold, that's Wendy's now, right? And my dad turned it down, and has admitted to me, you know, there was regret, but in the same breath has never admitted to me that, he was bummed that he didn't accept it, but has never truly admitted like how his life would have changed if he would have done that, like how things would have been different. And there's this piece of this story that's kind of running through in my head of um, I don't know, maybe taking that leap and doing this would be a foolish and crazy thing to do, but on the same breath also um, there's this piece of would I regret it, and I don't know if I didn't take the leap. I really
So,
it's
I mean,
so
in that vein, like if you explore that, because your brain went there and it's a story
yeah.
about your dad, like ultimately it's got nothing to do with you.
Hmm.
How are you playing out the exact same story of your dad?
I know, and that's exactly like the kind of the messed up thing that's popping up into my head right now of
Yeah.
like, wow, are you really going to allow this to happen? I just think about his life being different, our life being different, like everything having been different, and here I am facing like the same exact scenario. I mean, maybe not exactly the same because I'm building my own business. I don't have a
Sure.
franchise I'm buying into, but I have all the capabilities and competencies to be able to run and operate a business. That's not a question. I have the money right now to be able to invest and help to grow and potentially, leap myself out. It's not a bunch, but it's enough that I could shake off corporate and struggle for three
So if
months
you
while it
pause that story, right?
balance.
Because
Yeah.
a through line of even with your dad, like one of the things you mentioned, like he never actually allowed himself to envision where that could have gone. He's just in regret. You are not in regret because you actually haven't. Well, maybe. I mean, you let me know, but it sounds to me like okay, it's I'm seeing the parallels in our story.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have all of the pieces, just like he could probably have gotten all of the money.
Mm-hmm.
And the other parallel here is like I have not once heard you talk about what is your vision for the business,
Mm.
right? What is your grand vision of that purpose, passion, impact?
Yeah.
How does it feel to even think about your boldest vision right now?
I mean, that's interesting. I don't even know that I've sat in it for a while.
Right. So even just pause right there,
Yeah.
right? I asked you about what's your biggest vision for your business. Your body completely shut down and you didn't have an answer.
I know what it is. I'm sitting in my lack of answers, the shock that I haven't sat in that feeling in a while.
Right. So what feeling have you sat in?
Yeah, yeah, that's like the feeling I've sat in is how am I going to get there? Right? How am
Right.
I going to leave? How am
So
I going to get
the
there?
lack of certainty, right?
Yeah,
Like I've sat in the doubt, in the lack of certainty
yeah,
of having, if I follow XYZ path, I know my vision will get there. But as you already know, your vision is a unique representation of you that's going to be built by you, and it doesn't have a path. It has your unique signature to it,
yeah.
right? So you haven't actually even sat in the vision, you've sat in the unvision. Like you've sat in very well, like wrapped up excuse of, well, no, I need the path, I need to sit in the, like I need to figure it out, I need to know the how.
Mm,
You know what I mean? So it's like another
mm.
ripple, another mask of that fear energy.
Yeah, well, that's another, I think, even the fear, that addiction energy, that perfectionist, that control freak, that needing to know
Yep.
how, right?
Yeah.
And it was just crazy because I often tell myself, like, I don't care how, right? It's a matter of, following whatever signs are going to get
Right.
there.
Which sounds great. And you know that intellectually,
Yeah,
but
but
you're afraid to embody that.
mm, yeah.
So to not kind
uh,
of sit in this space, right? If we zoom out a
mhm,
little bit again, because at the end of the day, like your business isn't selling iPhone cases, like it is doing transformational work with other
mhm,
human beings.
yes.
How do you think your meekness and hesitation translates into the impact of other people's lives?
Mm. You just you just kind of lit a fire there. Um, I don't I and it's interesting because there are so many things that I've just jumped. If you're aware of the woo, the fool is not a card that I'm unfamiliar with. Just taking the leap. When I left my last corporate job, I had nothing lined up. Right. Even last year, when I said, "Hey, I'm going part time," I was like, "If you don't like it, then we'll part ways." Right. And so now here, to your point of, there may be other clients that are actually needing me to make this as well, right? To see, to let go, to not, allow this stuff. And I looked at it from that perspective,
Yeah,
that
like
if,
if you imagine the end of your life and you have to go and you knock on the door of every single person who you could have helped while being in this space of inaction, indecision, and you now have to apologize. Like, I could have helped you. I could have given you insights that were needed at that time of your life. What comes up for you?
mm, mm. I mean, the only word that comes to mind is the regret of not doing it. I'm sorry. I should have been a better example. I should have shown you that taking the leap is always going to lead, God, to something better. Now I'm even seeing the mirror of something else in my personal relationship that I have going on right now, that I've been asking them to, like, shit or get off the pot. And here I have something in my life that I'm struggling with. So man, what a mm, interesting perspective that you've painted.
And in that space, right? Like, I'm sure you have clients where you walk them through how to take a leap of faith as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely, I
So in
have.
terms of like, because you said integrity is something that's very important to me,
Yeah.
right? Even though I know if not conscious, and I know you're not intending by any means to like be harmful to anybody, and this isn't even a malicious thing, but energetically, right?
Hmm.
That there's going to be a disconnect in energy there of I'm telling people to do the thing that I myself am at least not willing to do. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to do it right away or it's got to look a particular way, but there's a lot of head trash and friction and resistance around doing the thing I coach people to do it with. So it's like a next level of your own evolution there.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And it's the question that pops in my head now is why have I, because it all starts with a conversation with my managers and my corporate job. Why have I delayed that?
And I mean, ultimately, the thing that I just want to bring to your attention as well, it's like right now, it's evident how much mental real estate is occupied in the limbo.
Oh
All of the
God.
different versions of like, I don't know why, how's it like, it's a lot of hemorrhaging of your mental, emotional, and energetic resources. And the reason why I bring that up isn't just to, add another layer to this conversation. It's also like you're in a very unique position to go from good to great. That doesn't mean I gotta drop everything that I'm doing, go into this crazy, uncertain, tumultuous time and move forward, right? I don't feel like it's necessary. Like what's necessary is exactly what you've described that you already understand tactically. I gotta know what I need to transition. I'm good at executing, so I gotta know what to execute. It's like from the outside looking in, I feel like there's actually a lot of space for you to build the equivalent or more, let's just say financially, in terms of like a financial either safety net or just momentum in what you're doing right now without having to quit. I don't feel that energy from the outside looking in. I think the friction point to that isn't this binary, I got to quit or like shit or get off the pot energy. It's the amount of energy I'm wasting, hemorrhaging around all of this doubt, etc., is what I could be reallocating to making the smoothest transition into stepping into my grandest vision. But it's going to require facing all these aspects of myself. Because regardless of whether you quit tomorrow or you quit in a year while making this new business, like what it can be, you're going to have to face all of these things that we talked about today. And it's just a matter of do I face it while having a good, comfortable position, or do I face it while I'm now falling at the same time? And, there's other
Yeah.
layers of like real survival needs that are there. So, what lands for you there?
Yeah. No, and I think you're kind of hitting on part of why I'm exploring this now. I know I don't have to like, cut off my arm in order to make all of this happen. I know that there's the possibility to be able to like step into this in a better way. You're spot on with the mental space. I call it crazy making when you get like um it's very common with folks, that have addiction in their past. They get these mental, you know, cycles where they're spending more time thinking about things than they're actually taking action on, and it can make you feel crazy. um, so that definitely hits around, yeah, like regardless of now or late, all of these still have to be faced, looked at, you know except, rewritten if it's a story that's not true and not serving. um yeah, so I would agree with that.
So, what's coming up for you right now?
um right now there is, the word that comes to mind is some disappointment of, like, why do I have to make this so complicated? like really it's just these are conversations. Um, I have this tendency to, you know, get, caught into these mental patterns, um, and make things very black and white around like have to quit, have to not. And so like,
Right. Well, going back into the like perfectionism, like it's either got to be this or it's got to be that. Like there's not a lot of
uh,
room for the middle end of the continuum,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So yeah, I think that's just holding the mirror and the light to those patterns, right? The part of the reason you got to them is because judgment and inner critic is going to be a big part of
Hmm.
your process, right? That's very common with addiction, right?
Yep.
So now that the light is shined where you didn't want to look, the first default reaction is going to be, well, if I judge myself, then I'll get better, right? And we all know nobody's really judged their way to success. So I think I just stress that to just normalize your reaction right now. I think it makes sense given everything that you've shared. And I invite you to just consider the reframe like this is something that you can either put in the trunk and is going to weigh you down and continue perpetuating this, or it's something that's going to go in the tank and really propel you forward, right? So that's kind of what I bring to your awareness. So what comes up for you when I share that?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I'm not really much of a fan of allowing anything to be baggage to weigh me down. I prefer much more to use things from a fuel perspective. It's it's very interesting to me. Um, where my head's going with this is, I mean, there's a couple of pieces. There's like this piece of my head that's going, okay, like now what am I going to do, right, with all of this information? And then there's this other side that's going like, stop, right? Like, you don't have to do anything right now. Just recognize that this is what you're going through. That these are the things that are like popping up in this conversation. Um, I have spent the last couple of months doing a lot of things. And so these last couple of weeks, I've been trying to just create space to not do things. And so that's really what's coming up for me is this mental reminder of these conversations are what's needed for me to be able to stop and to reflect and to look at these things. But I do not need to take any action right now, because what I actually need is to come back into some state of like homeostasis and then see where everything's at. Because it's been hard for me to be there. You jokingly said the addiction of like, um, being on our phones and stuff. I literally bought a locker for my phone because that is the next thing addiction that I have been trying to face has been my um, phone distraction. Um, I just feel like I haven't had the space to settle and to be and to feel these things. And that's really what I think I need to do right now is to feel what we've talked about, and not try to like do anything with it besides that.
Yep, I would agree with you 100%. So in that space, why don't you begin to close us off and just summarize in your words, what did you come into this conversation thinking was your business problem, and what was your aha moment as the result of the conversation?
Well, my business problem is not being able to generate the revenue goals uh, that I have set. My aha is really all of these stories that I've created that has capitalized my mental and energetic space around around this whole business versus corporate, and the question of like, why do I even have to have business versus corporate? I think that's really been a lot of what I've been trying to feel into. And I think you just during this session. We kind of really hit the light bulb on, I've been trying to control this.
Yeah, kind of going into the control freak pattern. So absolutely makes sense. So I think it's a beautiful summary. So if you're gonna just close us off, let everybody know where to find you, who's the best person to find you. Floor is yours for that.
Uh, well, my name is Jen Romanowski, but in business, I go by Sunshine. So you can always find me on sunshinereadings.com. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well, Sunshine Readings. So you can go ahead and search and find that. And email's always a really great option, sunshine@sunshinereadings.com as well, if you want to reach out.
Beautiful. Well, as always, we'll include that in the show notes. Jen, thank you very much for coming on. And for everybody else listening, we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Jessica.